lot of pressure. The shareholders are worried about the overall restructuring. Of course, you have explained that how financial services business will also be part of Grasim. What's the rationale behind turning this company into a large holding company of three big businesses, which is telecom, financial services, and cement was already there? And how will you also pacify the shareholders of Grasim when they ask you about telecom business? Because if they don't want any exposure to telecom as a business, which is going to be part of this restructuring, sir?
So just to pick up 2 points from that. Firstly, I think the stock has taken a beating because I don't think what was reported was the structure that we've actually announced. So the structures that were reported, as you would know, were all based on speculation. And I think the reaction has been, the reaction has been to what was reported in the press. Telecom, clearly it's one of the operating companies where this Nuvo will have a fairly substantial stake. Having said that, it's a large company. It's raised very large finances in the last 10 years without any funding from the promoter. So to assume that this is being done to fund Idea, I think is a bit preposterous. Can I just finish? Yeah.
Mr. Birla.
And so I think Idea will have its own funding plan, as will, ABFSG. And to assume that this is being done, like I said, to fuel Idea is, I think, you're jumping the gun. That's not the intent as of now. Like I said, Grasim shareholders get exposure to new businesses, two new businesses which are fast growing and linked in with the growth of the economy. So
right.
You were saying?
Mr. Birla, you had the option.
In terms of, just a second, just to clarify, could you help us understand and take us through the exact debt contours of the merged entity? What will be the total debt that the merged entity will have?
Okay, I'm going to pass this on. I'll pass this on to Sushil.
So, and Mr. Agarwal, if you could also clarify, there's been a lot of analysis, a lot of speculation on what happens to the debt that Idea has and what is the exposure. I understand and I completely get Mr. Birla's point, but if you could clarify that, will you be taking on any portion of that debt? Will there be any exposure?
So currently, and I'll kind of tell you as of June, which we just announced the result today for both Grasim and Nuvo. Grasim in any case is a surplus company on a net basis. They have around 460 crores surplus cash on net basis. And Nuvo has around 2,000 crores kind of debt. On a combined basis, as we saw, that, and Mr. Birla did explain that net debt to EBITDA would be around 0.5 or 0.6. So that's the level of leverage which we have. So I think on a combined basis, there is no leverage at all, and balance sheet is very, very strong.
Okay, but in terms of, would there be any portion of exposure that fall into the cash flow?
So that's what I was trying to explain. That there is no exposure to the debt of Idea that this Nuvo will have. So I think that apprehension is completely ill-placed. Idea as a separate operating company will have its own financing plans.
Also, it's the complex structure that we are forming. Just one number on...
I wanted to understand the underlying theme of the merger. Is it essentially simplifying the ownership structure? Is it value unlocking? Or also is it to give a boost to the financials of Idea? That is number one. You had two options. One is to merge the two companies and then demerge the financial services out of it. And you also had the option of demerging the financial services out of AB Nuvo and merge it. But you chose the former. Is there any particular reason why you did that?
Okay, I'm going to pass this on to Saurabh, who heads corporate strategy.
And on the theme behind the merger, I mean, what is the inherent theme behind the merger?
So I thought the whole presentation was around that, no, Avi? Anyways, so Saurabh will take you through it again.
Let me add to that. If you look at different options which were there in front of us, you rightly mentioned, we had an option of merging both and then demerging financial services versus actually demerging financial services and then merging rest of the entity into Grasim. If you look at what we have done, actually we have given exposure to Grasim shareholders as well to a fast-growing financial services business. So objective here has been to provide direct shareholding in financial services to both set of shareholders, plus offer a high growth business like financial services to both sets of shareholders. To add to that further, if we look at the track record of the growth for each of these individual companies, AB Nuvo has grown by more than, if you look at the numbers which were shown, has grown at more than 18% over past 3 years. If we look at the growth of Grasim on a consolidated basis, it has been less than 10%. So we believe the combined company offers a significant growth in addition to 3 strong businesses within this portfolio to both the sets of shareholders.
And would we be wrong to say that...
So I think the theme is that of value creation for both sets of shareholders. We keep looking for opportunities to create value, and we believe that this is something, like I said, which will be a win-win for both sets of shareholders. What it also does is simplifies group ownership, for example, but that really is a happy coincidence or a fallout of that. It's not driven by the need to do that.
And since it comes just weeks ahead of the rollout of RelGeo, are we to assume that you are also looking to beef up the financials of Idea in
So I just said that that's not really a criteria at all. So I think that's something that you all have assumed. It just so happens that it coincides with the launch of Geo.
Another concern that shareholders or analysts have raised, is that given the fact that most of AB Nuvo companies are not core to Grasim, what is the sense that it makes for Grasim? What are the synergies that there will be? I'm sure there would be some synergies that you would look at a later date. What are the synergies that the non-core Grasim companies can have? If you could outline the strategy there.
I think the biggest theme around is the Grasim shareholders are getting exposure to financial services business, which is a growing business. And they'll also get a direct listed shares. So that's the biggest theme. And Grasim, if you look at in normal course, at a standalone level, are relatively having a business which has a lesser growth in some form. And I did show some number, and Saurabh did kind of capture that, saying that if you look at the growth of both the companies, on relative term, Nuvo has grown far better in a growth point of view.
Right, and 13% or 13 to 14% discount to the current market price is the valuation as per the swap ratio to AB Nuvo. So could you explain why this kind of a valuation, what really went behind the valuation also?
So we have 2 independent valuers, Nisha, and this swap is actually based on the valuation done by them. So we had Bansi Mehta and Company and PwC, and we had 2 firms doing giving us a fairness opinion, Kotak and GM Financial.
All right, and it's a very complex structure, Mr. Birla. Is there any stamp duty impact that's going to be an expense?
So there will be some stamp duty impact, but very small given the overall size of the transaction. Nothing that's worth really, worrying about.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact number, but it's very small, it's insignificant.
There are synergies in a lot of companies. Like the chemicals and the other verticals that you have, which were anyways under one leader in the group, but were in 2 different entities. Now that it's going to combine as one merged entity, is there any CCI restrictions that we may, or hurdles that we may really...
So we will have to go to CCI for approval, as would be the case for any such transaction. But we don't anticipate any impediment there at all, because I think the addition that's happening is is well within the limits that CCI would look at.
Are there any legalities that will be involved, sir, in terms of approvals? You've already stated the timeline, but in terms of approval, in terms of the legalities, what is the process? What is the step-by-step process that you're looking at?
I can't tell you a step-by-step process. Basically, it will be completed by the end of this financial year. It will involve, clearances from CCI, from the stock exchange. It will go to high courts, Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh, and you'll require approvals of the shareholders and creditors.
Mr. Birla, you've also said that there will be the financial services business will be listed. Can we have some sort of a timeline towards the listing of the...
So I think we said that we're about May, June of next year, of calendar year 17,
and how soon,
by when we expect it to get listed.
And is there also a plan to get a financial investor on board when it comes to ABFSL?
So I don't rule that out. I mean, that's always a possibility, and we can always draw on that possibility. But there's no plan as of now specifically to do that.
There's a lot of M&A activity happening in the financial services space, and since you pointed out that the entity is going to be listed soon, I'm just curious, would you be exploring any acquisitions before the listing in the financial services space?
So we're always open to opportunities. nothing specific that I can talk about just now. But if there is an interesting opportunity that adds value, then we definitely look at it.
So you're not ruling it out?
So growing through acquisition is something that we've done in the past as well.
All right.
But nothing specific that we're looking at just now. So I think at the cost of repetition, like I just said, this is not driven by IDEA. IDEA is a separate, large, a listed company. It's got its own financing plan. It has many sources of finance which it has drawn on in the past. It's done a QIP offering. It's got private equity. It's got a strategic investor. So I don't think we should get too focused or fussed about IDEA. And I think that, each company, each of these companies, you talked about capital allocation, have to have their own, they do have their own financing plans and their own growth plans. So also, the new Grasim will have to have its own, the board of the company will have to take allocation of capital decisions. Having said that, I do see funds going to fuel the financial services business, which I think requires the funding, and that's been one of the reasons for this major restructuring that we've announced.
But still, like, one of the concerns when this merger has been now proposed, the shareholders would like to know is like, which are the biggest top or three segments which you would be liking to actually focus on, where actually the money is going to be moving towards, and those sectors are going to be given a much larger thrust.
You're saying for whom and what?
Grasim shareholders.
So I think it will be their existing opcos, their existing operating businesses to start with. That would be, I guess that those would be the first port of call for capital allocation.
As I said that the company already is in normal course is a surplus cash company, and even with the merger, the debt to EBITDA is 0.5. So there is really no need for the debt at this stage. And given, as Mr. Birla was explaining, if there is any need as we go along, we'll kind of find a right capital structure for the company.
Right, and also, what's the total value of the financial services business as per the entire valuation?
Look, you guys can do the arithmetic. We have given you the numbers. We have different components of businesses. I see very few businesses out there which compare to our financial services in length and breadth of what we offer to public market investors. We have insurance, we have asset management company, we have NBFC, housing finance, and several other initiatives which are still taking shape and becoming bigger. Look, the history of the group, if we look at, to address a couple of other questions which had come up, if we look at, I think, the group, overall we have delivered shareholder returns, even in our holding companies, if you may want to call them, has been far superior to the Sensex returns in any time frame if you could look at. If you do your arithmetic, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 7 year, 10 year time frame, probably we have delivered returns, shareholder returns, which are more than 50% in excess of the Sensex returns, which itself shows the history of the group in terms of creating shareholder value overall and rewarding shareholders as we moved along. Look, the valuation has been done by independent valuers, so I'm not here to comment on that. But if we look at the ratios and different components of it, it's not that complicated to really value the financial services business. The metrics are very much out there. We have conveyed to you what the total size of assets under management are. We have given you the net worth of our NBFC business. We have given you the book size of our NBFC business. We have given you where our insurance business today is. You are aware of the benchmark which was set by when Sun Life bought a 24% stake from us very recently. If you look at other components, we have shared with you all the book values. It's a pure arithmetic. I think numbers for each of these segments are very well known. I would not want to guide the market towards any particular number. I think it's for the market and the analysts to do their own arithmetic We are here to perform and take the business.
Sir, just wanted to understand from you, since we're talking about the group and the rejig, there was a slide where you showed each of the businesses that you're going to be focusing on, be it financial services, textiles, telecom. What about fertilizers, sir? We've seen Tata Chemicals, for example, exiting the urea business. What's your focus? Do you intend to stay in this business? What's your own outlook there?
I think fertilizers in India, I think, is going through an interesting phase. And if you look at the government policies, especially on urea, after gas price cooling and the mentioned initiatives on DBT and so on, I think it's going to be an interesting space in the years to come. So at the moment, we are looking at it very positively. And if you look at the construct of our business, we are trying to focus also on non-urea components like chemicals and specialty fertilizers. So overall, I believe that it's still a very positive sector for us. And if the government really moves, urea could be one of the sunrise sectors in the agri space.
You said at the moment, so how long are you, hoping things could?
I think it all depends on the government. If you look at the way the government has been functioning, we are short of urea. India is short of urea by about 8 million tons. And the government is trying to invest a lot of money, if you see, in the PSUs, which are non-functional at this stage. So the intent on the government's part is to give the urea sector a real push. And I think we will benefit through the policies in the coming days. So as we go along, we think, or we look at urea positively, or the agri sector positively.
Sure.
Mr. Birla, you've created a diversified conglomerate in Grasim Nuvo, but at the same time, it's a holding company of sorts for many businesses. And we know that stock markets always trade holding companies at a discount. Do you see that as a concern in some ways?
So it's not intended to be a holding company. It's got several operating businesses of its own, in fact more now than before. It does have significance in some of the other operating companies of the group, but we're not intending it to be a holdco. So you've got now VSF, you've got cement, you've got VFI, chemicals. So all of these are fairly substantial operating businesses. The idea is to optimize each business as opposed to being we can't really do much about what's happening with the stock.
So if I look at the company as a whole, what is the percentage of revenues that will come from operations, and what is it that will come from the holding business that is there for the group?
I can come back to you later with an answer. Revert to you later. Don't have the number just now.
Sorry.
The enterprise value of the entire transaction that's being announced today, and also with the telecom auction that's upcoming, what are your fundraising plans for IDEA? You talked about that IDEA has a fundraising plan, but will those fundraising plans be backed by Grasim?
So broadly, in terms of enterprise value, difficult to give you a number, but if you just do a broad maths and add up the market cap of the two companies, Nuvo and Grasim, that would be broadly the EV of the transaction.
So with respect...
It's not really a conference for ideas, so I'm going to give that question a pass.
So with respect to the Aditya Birla Financial Services Group, now that all the insurance businesses will be kept in one basket, would this mean possible IPO of Birla Sun Life sometime in the near future?
Firstly, I think what's going under Aditya Birla Financial Services is a host of businesses, not just insurance. BSLI is one of the businesses that will go in. Once we list the holdco, we don't really see an immediate need to create, listed companies underneath it. So at this point in time, at least there's no plan to do that.
Ajay, Sajid here from Bloomberg Quint. You mentioned that the financial services will have a revenue of nearly 9,000 crores and earnings before tax of 995 crores. What is the profit for that entire financial services business? Can you give an idea of that?
That was the number for financial services.
EBT, earnings before tax. After tax?
So I don't have the number straight away, but I'll give you that number.
we have a payment bank license already, which is... Not really. So we have ABFS and Idea as partners for the payment bank license. Idea is not part of this transaction, so I don't think payments bank will be helped on account of this transaction happening. To a pretty independent.
Fair enough. And if you could just, if Saurabh could take us to the dilution in independent holding companies once the merger is completed. The stake dilution in independent holding companies once the merger goes through.
An independent holding company.
From Idea, or if you could take us, what is the dilution of the promoter share in, say Idea Cellular or any of the other firms?
Don't understand your question. Nothing to do with promoter shareholding in Idea.
There won't be any dilution?
Promoter shareholding in Idea?
Yeah.
Oh, no, there's no connect.
Because there was a concern that analysts had raised with respect to dilution.
No connect with this.
Okay, no funding. This is not aimed, this entire restructuring is not aimed at really funding Idea, is what you said, Mr. Birla. But I'm also curious to know what are the funding options that you have for Idea, what could be expected from there, if you could throw a little light on that.
So, Nisha, like I said, this is not a press conference for Idea. You can always talk about it offline. Idea has its own financing plans, I'm sure.
But the times are challenging, you would say, and how does Aditya Birla Group look at?
Of course, it's very challenging. Like I've always maintained, the next 2 years will be very tough, I think, in that sector.
Okay, a broader question then, if whoever could answer that, what is the broader 3-year time frame that you are saying? Mr. Birla said that for both the financial services business and the merged entity.
So I can give you a sense in the financial services business. I think if you look across the spectrum, each one of the businesses actually we see a lot of headroom to grow. Simply, if you look at India, huge growth in income, huge increase in income per individual, low penetration of financial products. As you reach more and more people, there's opportunity to grow. It's a direct play on GDP. If GDP continues to grow 7.5%, 8%, you should assume that financial services will grow 15 to 20%. And because our financial services are fairly complementary, so we're not really competing against each other. Each business caters to a specific need. Therefore, we see each of them having a headroom to be able to grow, going forward. I think each one will have its own path to growth, and that will depend on the industry in which it operates. So it's difficult to give you a headline number as to what will happen. But I clearly see the growth being driven by the lending business. I think the NBFC, the housing finance business will drive growth. The asset management business, I think we're seeing a lot of traction from retail investors in the asset management space. That should contribute to growth. And the life insurance business is also turned. I think we've started to see growth coming back there. So that should be the third or fourth engine of growth. And then we have a number of new things coming up. So the housing finance business, the payment bank, I think all of that will contribute in addition to this, to further growth for the business.
Mr. Birla, like the financial services business, which as you were explaining, it has a lot of avenues for growth. Within the group, cement is a very high cash generating business, more than 15% ROIC. So for the other segments, where are you actually identifying at present very strong opportunities? And where actually you would be deploying cash to actually increase it further?
So I think if you see that on a combined basis, we have been growing at a revenue level in double digit. And broadly, all of our businesses are kind of, that's a merged number, as a consolidated number. So broadly, most of these businesses are growing in double digit. That itself is a significant growth. And financial services, particularly as Ajay has articulated, that's the one of the largest growth engine for the company.
Vijay from ET now. If once again we could have a try. If we could ask you, sir, on the timing of this whole deal and the way it's structured, is it also to do with the timing to unlock the value of Aditya Birla Financial Services, the way internally it's panning out, and also the way
yes,
the economy
that is one of the driving factors for this transaction, like I said. So it's reached a size and scale where I think it's an opportune time to monetize some of the value in a way that you can use the funding that comes about to grow the business further. So that is one of the driving factors for this transaction.
Just last question for the housekeeping purpose. So while the valuations would have been derived, as you were saying, with the independent advisors, while deriving the valuations, were the holding company discounts were also being kept in mind, and the intrinsic valuation was actually more being kept in mind?
So like I think someone explained earlier, the valuation was done by 2 independent valuers. Can't comment on what methodologies they use because we're not aware of that. I'm sure they know what they're doing. Thanks so much, and I hope that you will make amends for all the wrong reporting in the last 2 days and what is done to our stocks.